Hey everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about how to live off of your garden, how to produce enough food to feed your family. So I'm going to be talking about that throughout this video, giving you lots of tips and tricks, things that I've learned season after season of doing this. So I started off by really wanting to be self-sufficient, have a garden, and this was years ago when I would watch videos of people doing this, and I just dreamed of one day having a garden like this. Well, I ended up moving to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona to be specific, and as you'll know, it's very arid and dry there. I started off by having a little garden. It was a little raised bed garden, and things would sprout, but nothing would really take off. I wasn't used to growing any vegetables anywhere, and much less in Arizona. So much to say that was a little bit of a failure, but it was a start, and we all start somewhere, and it did produce some learning for me. So I encourage you, wherever you're at on your journey of producing or growing your garden, to go ahead and do so. Start small, whether it's a raised bed or container garden or just some tomatoes or something in a pot. This side of my garden has my tomatoes and my pepper plants, and just to give you an idea, this section really produces a whole lot of tomatoes, a whole lot of peppers, and from these I can make things like sauces, which I can just have fresh, or I can make soups, which I can have fresh or can. I can freeze any of these peppers. I can, make stuff with them now, make all kinds of salsas. So it's really endless what you can do with these tomatoes and peppers. They're really able to be used now or can them. Another thing that we've done around the property is plant trees. These are fruit trees. So this is one of my peach trees. My peach trees are kind of not producing as much as they used to. Peach trees do have seasons, and there are some seasons where they produce a ton of fruit. But either way, we have quite a bit of fruit trees throughout the property. And with the fruit, we can make things like jellies, we can make things like preserves. All of that is canned, so you can have it throughout the year. And to have fresh, you can make things like cobbler, or you can even can cobbler in pies. So it's a really nice sweet treat that you could do. Here is my plum tree. So it's good to plant various types of fruit. Plums are very good for like plum sauces and marinades. You can just eat them fresh when they're ready. You can dehydrate them and make things like prunes. Any of the fruits you can dry or dehydrate, and you can make things like fruit leathers. There's an endless amount of snacks and things that you can make from these fruits. This is my fig tree. Figs produce in abundance. They produce a ton of figs, and fig trees really grow very quickly. It's a good source of nutrients for you, and you can also do things like jellies and jams, and you can also dehydrate them or, dry them for things to put into salads or, just to have as a snack. They're very sweet, they're very nutritious, and they're very good to have, and you can also incorporate them into different recipes and things like that. Have them with some goat cheese. There's an endless amount of ideas that you can have with fruit. So we have different fruit trees around the property. These are pumpkins we are growing in the garden, and these pumpkins we usually grow and then we will actually, bake them and freeze them, use the pumpkin puree for later on. We like to use our own pumpkins for our pumpkin pies for Thanksgiving, so we get all of that ready in the summer. And then we save some pumpkins for Halloween. They actually keep that long. And then we have our own pumpkins for decorations or for carving. We plant the smaller pie pumpkins, and we also plant the jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. What I showed you there was some radishes. Radishes are good for your salads if you want to have them fresh, but we've also learned how to boil them and to freeze them. So it's very interesting the different things you can do. We have an abundance of yellow squash like I was showing you. All of that you can freeze or you can have now. Here I'm showing you again my tomatoes. There's different types of tomatoes. So you can always plant all kind of variety of peppers, tomatoes, so that you don't get bored. We like to do bell peppers, jalapenos, habanero peppers, and you can make, anything out of that. You can also add them to your jellies and jams to have a little bit of spice. We have cherry tomatoes. We have the sweet cherry tomatoes. All of that is really good as a snack with some ranch, or you can have it in your salads. It just is a whole lot of food that you can really nourish yourself with in the summertime or the springtime. And then once it starts to become fall and winter, you'll have like your canned sauces and all of that. I've also frozen tomatoes. You can use those later on in recipes like soups and things like that. So yeah, tomatoes grow very quickly and they produce a lot. You do have to make sure that you pick your tomatoes. You pick any of your vegetables that are growing, like your yellow squash, so that the plant knows to continue to produce. Otherwise, it thinks it's done producing. So it's good to get out there and pick all the tomatoes and vegetables that you have as soon as you see that they're ripe. So some of the other things that we're planting here or that we have are some of these snow peas. These are something that we use for Asian dishes. You can have them fresh and we like to boil them. You can also can them as well. You can freeze them. So there's many ways you can preserve your food. You could also dry them and dehydrate them. I have seen at the grocery store where they have things like that. We've never done it, but you can always do that as well. Along the back of our garden and throughout our property, we have a lot of berries growing. Usually they're blackberries. So that's another source of food that we have that we can make jellies, jams, sauces, things that we can put over our pancakes, our biscuits, we can have with ice cream, and all of that is canned after you make it, and you can can it and or freeze it, whatever you prefer to do. You can freeze your blackberries for making smoothies. So there's just an endless amount of things that you can do with berries. We've also planted raspberries. In the past, we've done things like blueberries, and those are very good to freeze for smoothies or different recipes that you're going to use later on. So one of the things that's important to do is to meal plan. So I like to meal plan different meals and things that I'm going to do with fresh things around the summertime, and then I like to meal plan also for the winter and the fall seasons where I'm going to be using more of my canned items. So you can can things like green beans, okra, all of that stuff, and you can have it later on. So it's important to know what kind of meals you're going to actually be making. You can see there I'm growing some zucchini. Zucchini is really good to also grate and freeze. You can also make zucchini bread and freeze it. You can, blanch it and freeze it. You can also can it. Same thing with your yellow squash. They're very similar, and there's so many recipes that you can make from both of these, some of which I've shared here on this channel, like different kinds of casseroles, gratin, just boiling them in different ways. So it's a really good vegetable to have as a side. It's a great side dish for most any meal, and it's nutritious, and it's coming straight from your garden. So growing things straight from your garden also gives you a sense of pride, a sense of self-sufficiency, and if you have children, it really teaches them how they can grow their own food. Here are some cucumbers. We grow different varieties of cucumbers, some of which are very good for salads, and some of which are very good for canning and pickling. So we love to make pickles, and we make different kinds of pickles. We make things like bread and butter pickles. We make the dill pickles. We make just different flavors as well. You can add flavoring to them, and these are great snacks and treats to have later on. So here are our green beans. They are now starting to come in. With our green beans, I have various recipes that I use throughout the year, and if you'd like to check that out, check out my Cook With Me playlist. I have different things on there. We do Asian green beans. We use, just butter in our green beans, sauteing them. A lot of things we can grill. And green beans obviously are a great thing that we can and you can have later on. Most of us have all eaten canned green beans, and they're very, very good. So if you'd like to check all that out, go ahead and check out my Cook With Me playlist. If you're interested in meal plans, I'm planning to put together some meal plans and share those with you online. So this is what our garden looks like. It's not super huge, but it's big enough that it grows a ton of food for us, for canning, and also for giving away. One of the things that we struggle with is weeding, but that is not a big deal. We usually still produce a ton of food, even though it's hard for us to weed. We both work, we both have, different hobbies and responsibilities, and yet we are still able to grow this garden. So I encourage you, no matter what your situation is, to go ahead and plant a garden if that is in your heart. So green beans are one of my favorites. I just recently fried green beans. So I dipped them in batter and fried them. So check back for that recipe. I'm about to put that one out, I think, after this um, video. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you're new here and you like this sort of content, I encourage you to subscribe and come back for my recipes and my garden updates. That was a different kind of cucumber that we make, or that we grow. We grow different sorts of varieties of all of our plants. So we have different kinds of yellow squash, different kinds of cucumbers, different varieties of green beans, tomatoes, just to kind of switch it up. So that's another thing that you can do, is just plant different varieties, even in the same garden, along the same row. Just kind of mix it up so that you get different kinds of varieties of everything. So those are some of the tips and some of the things I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for coming along today. I will catch you on our next video.